Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in from various places around the school in your tutor time. As part of the events being held this week surrounding International Women's Day, I have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker, Anna McLean, who along with her brother Cameron, rowed over 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean in support of gender equality. Some of you may wonder what such an impressive nautical feat has to do with gender equality, but in fact, this powerful duo spent over 6 weeks at sea on a tiny rowing boat creating the #TheSameBoat initiative to promote the importance of global gender equality, which I think is pretty ingenious. Anna and Cameron raised money for the charity UN Women, an organisation that works with governments and civil societies to design laws, policies, programmes and services to promote global standards of gender equality. This charity specifically aims to increase women's leadership and participation, as well as to end violence against women and to enhance women's economic empowerment. We as a school are also raising money for this charity on Friday, when we wear something purple to school and give a donation. Also, many members of the Upper Sixth are participating in this year's International Women's Day campaign theme, Choose to Challenge, on Friday, with images of our hands held high. This is a sign of commitment to choose to challenge inequality, to call out bias, and to help shape a more inclusive society. For more information, ask your house parents or look at the International Women's Day website. And with that, I invite Anna to talk to us about her journey over the Atlantic and her experience with challenging gender inequality. There will also be an opportunity for questions afterwards, so please engage with Anna's talk by putting some questions in the Q&A box. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgie, so much for that great introduction. And firstly, I just want to say, Anna, it's great to have you, and thank you for being here as well.
Thank you. And Georgie, that was a wonderful introduction. You said it better than I ever could have, so thank you.
So Anna, we have so much to talk about, so let's just get straight in. We often like to start these webinars by talking about school, and as you're local to the area, could you start by telling us about your school life?
Of course. So I'm glad you started with school, because 20 years ago, I actually was part of Dean Close Squirrels. So I was a tiny little squirrel just running around. But yes, as you said, Holly, local to Cheltenham. So after Dean Close, I ended up going to CLC, and that's just down the road from a lot of you. And that's actually where I started rowing. So yeah, born and raised in the Cotswolds and absolutely love Cheltenham.
So how did you get into rowing?
Well, like many of you who might have siblings, I used to spend my Saturdays and my weekends and most afternoons supporting my brother in his endeavors. If you have a sibling, sometimes you think, oh, they can play the guitar, I'll be good at that too. And for me, it was rowing. So I used to just stand on the riverbank watching my brother row, and then I thought one day, you know, I have the chance to try it for myself, maybe I'll be good at it. And I ended up just falling in love with the sport. So if any of you know Tewkesbury River, it's just down the road, and Gloucester Canal, that's actually where I started rowing at school.
That's amazing, and it's so nice to hear that you are so local and you've had those experiences like many of our students will have as well. So what inspired that initial idea that you had to kind of row as far as you could?
I mean, I've always loved rowing, and for me, it was just spending as long as I possibly could on the water. Like anything, if it's like a subject you like at school, you want to do that homework first, so you spend all of your time studying that one because you enjoy it. So for me, it was sport and it was rowing. And then I actually was inspired when I moved from school into my professional career. I now work in technology. And I realized, wow, at school, I was surrounded by so many amazing young girls and women and leaders. But actually, in the real world, when I got into my professional career, I was shocked to see that in my industry in technology, there was really little women. So that kind of inspired the initiative to not only do a big adventure, but do it for a greater cause. And that's why I did it with my brother. and also bringing together, like Georgie mentioned earlier, the hashtag Same Boat campaign to raise awareness for gender equality.
That's amazing, thank you. And so many people listening are going to want to know, which I'm sure you'll talk about later, but what it was like actually taking on this challenge with your brother. When you decided to do this, was it your idea? Was it his idea? How did you kind of spark that initial idea?
So it was my idea, although I'm very glad that my brother is crazy enough to accept and jump on board with my crazy ideas as well. Yeah.
And as we know, Anna, as you mentioned before, we've had International Women's Day on Monday, and you launched the campaign Same Boat. Can you tell us more about this, and also perhaps your involvement with UN Women UK at the moment?
Yeah, so it's really hard choosing a charity. There are so many good ones out there. When my brother and I had committed to the cause, that's when we started thinking, okay, who are the best charities out there? And that's when we started researching UN Women. And as Georgie said exactly perfectly well, they are the only global organization dedicated to driving gender equality on a global scale. And it's actually contributing to the gender equality sustainable goal for 2030, which is incredible. And it's actually the World Economic Forum says that if we are continuing at the rate we are now, with the differences and inequalities in boys and girls, men and women, it will take us about 107 years to achieve equality. So to be able to contribute to a cause and a charity who's advocating every single day and getting girls and boys to inspire and achieve their dreams, then hopefully we will close that gap and it'll take us less than 107 years.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is a really fantastic message to pass on to our students. And I also think that that sets the scene nicely for what we're about to hear now. So thank you so much, Anna. And I will hand over to you for your talk. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. So I will be sharing my screen. Do let me know when you can see that. Okay, let me know.
Yeah, we can see that.
The audience can give a thumbs up if you can see it at the Bacon Theatre. Oh, there we go. Everyone's moving. Perfect. So yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you, Georgie, also for that intro. This year's theme for International Women's Day is, I'm sure you already know, but choose to challenge. And that is exactly what I'm going to share my story with you about today. And I've actually split it into two kind of sections. So the first is really that challenge of getting to the start line. So kind of going from having that idea of wanting to do something and then executing it. And then the fun part, which is really the challenge that we overcame at sea. So spending 43 days in the ocean itself. So in front of me was a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, it said, "Are you willing to risk it all?" And this wasn't just the risk of colliding with another boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and a boat which could be about 50 times bigger than ourselves, like these huge crater ships and cargo ships. And this wasn't even kind of just the risk of capsizing and being thrown into the ocean 4,000 meters deep beneath you. And it wasn't even the risk of serious injury or illness. There was also the risk of death. But honestly, none of this scared me, at least at that moment in time, none of it scared me. So I signed this piece of paper, which was in front of me, saying, "Yep, I'm willing to risk it all." But then I looked at the person next to me, and that person next to me was my biggest supporter, my best friend, and that was my brother. This was just a few years, obviously, before squirrels. Not only was I making sure that my brother had signed that piece of paper too, saying that he was going to risk everything. But it made me realize what scared me the most. It wasn't even on that piece of paper. And that was the risk of losing the 25-year relationship that I had with my brother, and the risk of tearing my entire family apart. I mentioned earlier, some of you might have brothers and sisters. You know, you fight, you argue, and you overcome those daily challenges, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the circumstances, because you don't want to lose that relationship that you have with them. You still care about them and you love them so much. So as I mentioned, this year's theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. I'm relating this back to my endeavor. Rowing across an ocean is a pretty big challenge, but rowing across an ocean with a family member, yeah, that's a little bit more challenging. And rowing across an ocean with a sibling of the opposite gender, this was unheard of. Nobody had ever actually done this before. People would say, like, are you crazy? What? There is no way I could spend that long in a boat with my sibling. So those of you who do have siblings, you know that spending even 2 hours in the car can be pretty tough sometimes. But if you had asked me where the idea came from that I was going to row across an ocean, I actually wouldn't have been able to tell you until recently in lockdown. We were clearing through some old files at home, and amongst them was my Christmas list from 2012. That's 9 years ago. And on it was a book called Rowing Across the Atlantic Ocean by Roz Savage. And she was the first female to row across the Atlantic solo. So a bit of background, I've always loved rowing. I started, as I mentioned earlier, I used to just watch my brother row and eat the bacon sandwiches on the side. But then I had the opportunity to try it at school. And as soon as I did, I realized this was the one thing I could do where my mind was able to just fully escape. I loved it so much. Anyway, I then went to university in America, and rowing over here was a little different. And I wanted to join my university team, but this was a pretty big challenge in itself. So there I was, the first day of practice in America, and I was a very lost yet hopeful British girl. The first day of practice, I actually passed out and fainted on the floor. And the second day of practice, I sprained my ankle. And by this point, everybody was thinking, so who exactly is this girl from England who claims that she's rowed before? Well, there were a few challenges in the early days. And this is when I realized you can love something, but not be very good at it. So after 2.5 hours of morning practice, we would have 15 minutes to go shower, grab a snack, and rush to class. And in class, I was still thinking about rowing. I wasn't thinking about anything else or my classes. I was just thinking about sport. And I would be refreshing my emails every minute, waiting for the dreaded Excel spreadsheet. So this was sent to the entire team, and it had on it our times and rankings from the session, always in order. So I don't know, imagine if your teachers sent your exam scores to the entire year group in order of best to worst. It was so brutal. So the fastest name was always at the top, and the slowest name was at the bottom. And my name was at the bottom every single day. And like I said, this is when I realized I really did love it, but I was just not good at it at all. And maybe there's something you've tried in your life, whether it's a new subject, an instrument, a sport, and you haven't been good at it, but you found it challenging too, like I did rowing, but you've overcome these and you enjoy it, so you keep doing it. So like anything, to get better at it, I had to practice a lot more than my teammates and put in the extra hours. So one day I checked this spreadsheet in class and finally my name wasn't at the bottom. I was one up. I went to practice the next day so excited. My hard work, my extra sessions, like they were paying off. I wasn't last on the list. But then I showed up and my name was at the bottom again. The girl who I had beat, she quit. Why? I mean, I had my doubts. I was training, my friends were socializing, but maybe I should give up too. She quit because she wasn't very good. Maybe I should have quit. But I loved it, and it was my passion for being on the water that just propelled me to keep pushing for my name above that, or for that name above my name every single day. And by my senior year, I am happy to say that my name featured at the top of the list quite a few times. But how did I move up in the rankings? Instead of seeing it as a challenge to beat the girl in front of me, I saw it as an opportunity to make myself stronger and make myself better. So if there's anything that's challenging you, see that challenge as an opportunity and you'll do it for yourself and not for the other people. So like I mentioned earlier as well, every session I just wanted to stay out on the water longer. And sometimes I would just persuade my teammates at the end of practice, like, oh, let's stay on the water and see how far we can row today. So that's when it sparked the question, how far can somebody row? Well, let me introduce you to the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. From La Gomera to the Canary Islands, from La Gomera in the Canary Islands, all the way across the Atlantic, 3,000 miles west to Antigua. It's also known as the world's toughest row. But tough didn't just include the rowing. Tough was also the extremely demanding 2 years of preparation to even make it to the start line, which is why I'd like to take you and walk you through a few of the challenges of the preparation, just getting to the start line, and then also the challenges that happened at sea. The first was the average cost to actually row an ocean is £100,000. And we'd hope to match that in donations for our chosen charity, the same one as yours, UN Women. But where do you even start with a mission like this? Perhaps some of you are looking to go into business or entrepreneurship in your careers. And I can imagine this as starting your own business. You have an idea, you have a vision of what you hope it becomes, but how do you go from this idea in your head to this dream that you have to it actually being a success? Well, the challenge we had set ourselves seemed practically impossible. So we started by brainstorming what we thought it would take to row an ocean from start to finish. A database of contacts, marketing, social media, finances, campaigning, sponsorship, networking, charity donations, navigation training, survival skills, VHF radio skills, mental training, physical training, Christmas cards, business cards, a website, presentations, fundraisers, talks, events, boat design, brand design, clothing, merchandise, buying a boat, equipping the boat, training in the boat. There was so much. There was so much to do, and it was just the two of us. It was just my brother and I. And somebody actually said to us before we started, you only have half of the time that you think you have. And this couldn't have been more true. Anyway, despite all of this, we thought, yeah, challenge accepted. So we quickly became whatever job we needed to be. A website designer? Yeah, you can do that. A graphic designer? I'm pretty sure there's apps on our phones now which just make awesome graphics. Social media whizzes? just get the color scheme right and you are sorted. A lawyer, I mean, we couldn't afford a lawyer. The contracts that we wrote ourselves and negotiated with sponsors, they seemed to work. Have you ever made up an excuse for not doing your homework? Trust me, I have been there. Well, this is for us. It seemed like a lot of homework, and how any of it got done, 80% of something is better than 100% of nothing. So next time that you don't feel like doing your homework, just remember that 80% of it is better than 100% of an excuse. We were trying to do everything, and it was pretty nonstop. And with this came a lot of other challenges. I was the host for my best friend's birthday party, and I didn't even attend. They all partied and had a great time, and I sat in my kitchen writing a sponsorship application form just to get some money. And our family dinners at home, they ended up just being a heated discussion, always ending up in an argument, and one of us, my brother or me, leaving the table no longer a member of the crew. And like I mentioned earlier, this was my biggest fear, losing that relationship that I had with my brother and tearing my entire family apart. Sponsorship was extremely challenging. Anyone here who's tried to fundraise or ever even just asked for something, I don't know, maybe you've asked your parents for the latest shoes, then I'm pretty sure you can relate to the types of people that I encountered and their responses. So the first are mobilizers. These types of people are awesome. They just say yes, like, yes, you can have those pair of shoes. For us, it was, yes, I will sign your sponsorship proposal, and they actually do it. And it's so rare to find people who say yes like this. And then there are talkers. If you just send me this and do this for me, then, oh, I'll forward it on to the right team. Or, oh, if you take the garbage out and the bins and you wash the dishes, then yeah, maybe you can get the shoes. You can spend hours doing everything they ask, and still yet somehow you never get what you ask for. And then there are blockers. No matter what you do, they will just say no. So try to get them to say no as early as possible. And then there are ghosters. I mean, you meet them once, they seem interested, and then they never follow up. You can never get in touch with them again. But after meeting all of these people, we still had very little money, and we had no boat. We were pretty stuck. We needed the sponsorship to get the boat, but we needed the boat as a honeypot to drive the sponsorship. So we were fundraising, and we managed to get some funds, and we actually scraped together every penny that we had. We even launched something called the 250 Club, where we got 250 people to donate 250 pounds, and they got their name on our boat all the way across the Atlantic, which was awesome. Every time we dove into the water, we were able to see their name, and really helped that they contributed to us. Well, another person I'd like to mention is my dad, and he was there for us every step of the way. It was also 1 year away from retirement, so he didn't really want to put his hand into his pocket. But not only did this put financial strain on our family, but he did a little bit, and he believed in us more than anyone and was there every single step of the way. In fact, this is a nice picture of him on our boat before we crossed. This was just down in Cirencester. And as part of the race, you have to have a safety inspection. So a few months before you leave, you meet with the safety inspector, and he just wants to make sure you're on track with your training and your equipment. But I told you my dad was there for us every step of the way. Well, he was even there when I took this picture at 3 a.m. before we had to tow our boat 4 hours to the east coast of England to a place called Burnham on Crouch by the sea. This morning, we had our inspection. And should I say we were ready for our inspection or far from ready? We were far from ready. And this was the same feeling as showing up for an exam totally unprepared. It was like a biology textbook having 12 chapters to know, and you have only read 2 of them. The inspection equipment list had on it 376 items. We had on it 3. The boat, a cooker, which we actually won in a competition, and some wet ration foods, which you can see on the floor there all duct taped up, which the boat next to us was throwing onto our side to make it look like we had something. But needless to say, like an exam you're unprepared for, our inspection went by very quickly. And Ian, the inspector, was far from impressed with us. And neither was our dad. "What have you been doing for the past few months?" he asked my brother and I. And that evening, we received an email from Ian, the safety officer. "Following the inspection, we will be cutting some crews for your race." What? How? We had already come so far. We had overcome so many challenges. We'd been trying our hardest. It wasn't like we weren't doing anything. How could he be cutting us? But he was right. We had been focusing our efforts on campaigning and funds and driving sponsorship and events, when really we needed to start focusing on preparing for what was about to be our home for 2 months at sea. To put this into perspective, if any of you have done Duke of Edinburgh, it would be the equivalent of planning your hiking route in detail and knowing where you're going to camp, but not even thinking about what equipment you might need to take with you, or your team, or your tent, or your camping gear, or your food. So being very unprepared. Anyway, we went very quickly from one extreme to the other. We had absolutely nothing, and we stopped focusing on the campaign and actually focused on what is it that we need to survive. So before we knew it, it was the race start, and all the boats were lined up side by side in La Gomera. And at this point, my brother was still getting ideas from other crews. A beanbag? Why would we need a beanbag? It's not supposed to be comfortable. And although the hats that he got an idea, they're these little hats with a solar fan, they actually worked pretty well if you're in the really torturous heat. Well, there I found myself in a 24-foot rowing boat called Lily, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, with what we had hoped was everything we needed to survive at sea. Getting to the start line, it was a challenge, but the rowing soon became a challenge too. It wasn't until I was side on to 40-foot waves, battling 27-knot winds in the pitch black and literally getting thrown out of my seat, that I realized just how monstrous the environment we were in was. We had a very rough start. Hour 2, our auto steering stopped working. We were having to move the rudder with our feet, putting strain on our knees. Within 6 hours, I started being violently seasick over the side of the boat, and this lasted for 4 days. On day 1, a massive wave hit us side on, breaking our oar. It was the first day. How could we already have broken something? And on day 3, the pipe on our water maker, which filtered the water from the sea so we were able to drink it, was about to burst every single time we turned it on. And day 4, we had company. Nope, not another boat. Instead, we were stalked by a 14-foot shark. And on day 12, we got a call from home. So you're doing pretty well, but just to let you know, you're actually coming 28th position out of 35 crews, and some solos are beating you. This was terrible. We were basically coming last. And we thought we had been rowing really hard, right? We thought we'd been rowing, but in reality, we had only been rowing to survive, and it was time to start rowing to compete. So as the waves grew bigger, so did our confidence to overcome them. And one by one, we just started gaining on crews. Morale was high, we were having fun. We jumped in to make sure the bottom of our boat was clean, so we would scrape all the barnacles off of the bottom. And we would sing songs together, we laughed, we were just anything to keep our minds stimulated. And then on day 33, we actually saw a mast in the distance. It was like waking up on Christmas Day as a child to presents under the Christmas tree. It was incredible. We couldn't believe it. And this mast in the distance was on the support yacht, which was marshalling the race. This picture was the first time we saw humans in over a month. We were so excited. We actually, as you can see, got close enough to speak to them from our boat. And the support crew asked us, "Is everything okay? Are you feeling okay? Is all of your equipment working?" Yeah, everything was brilliant. We were gaining on crews, we were beating some of the competition, things were going so well. Although, not for long. A few more challenges presented themselves. On day 34, our speaker broke. This wasn't so much of a problem until we realized we only knew the chorus instead of an entire song. But typically we would be rowing in 2 hours on and 2 hours off. So in that 2 hours off rowing, by the time you'd got a snack, you'd rehydrated, you'd checked your navigation, it left barely 90 minutes to sleep at a time. If you were ever late for a shift, even 10 seconds, it caused major conflict. On day 35, it was a pretty dark night. And I remember opening the hatch at 4 a.m. ready for my shift. And I see my brother rowing, but if you've ever tried rowing before, you have to use your whole body. And he was only rowing with his arms. His leg was up on the side of the deck and he couldn't bend his knee. His knee was all red and swollen. And in the Atlantic, the waves are so big, they just hit you side on. The oars are so brutal that they just bash you into the ribs, they bruise your knees, they hit your shins, they cut you everywhere. And my brother, from this picture, you can see he had a microscopic cut on his knee. At 6 a.m., it's time for his shift. And he opens the cabin and says, "Anna, please can you take my shift?" It was the sunrise shift, so I said yes. But little did I know that 2 hours would soon become 4 hours of rowing, which soon became 12 hours of rowing. And before I knew it, I had rowed for 36 hours straight because my teammate was confined to the cabin. Have you ever had a teammate get injured? Everything bad starts running through your mind, right? Like, oh my gosh, we have our best player out. Or what if we can't continue? What if we have to get rescued? What if we have to stop? What if we lose? What if we're out here for so long and we run out of food? All of these what ifs. Well, my brother's knee infection spread to his blood and he had a fever. But luckily, on board, we did take antibiotics with us. But we had been doing so well. We had gained on other crews, we were having fun, and it was pretty clear at this moment that we had very different expectations. I was the one rowing for 36 hours straight, so I expected him to fill up my water bottle and make me a meal. And he expected me to fill up his water bottle and care for him. So we both had very different perspectives at this time, which made the challenges even more difficult. He asked me, "Are you mad at me?" And I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at the situation. I was mad because he needed rest, but I needed my teammate. I needed him to row with me. This was the toughest moment for us. We were both extremely frustrated, exhausted, hungry, sleep deprived, dehydrated, and with what really little energy we had, we fought. In fact, there was one moment where my fist was an inch away from his face. And my brother yelled at me and he was like, "Anna, I cannot wait to get to land because I never have to speak to you again. Like, get lost." Where was I meant to go? There's nowhere to go in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So 2 hours later, and like any argument, neither of us had won. I didn't get to row, and my brother didn't get his rest. And he turns to me and says, "Anna, why are you still crying?" And I was crying because I was really upset about and scared that I was going to lose that relationship I had with my brother. And this was the biggest challenge that we had to overcome, and that was staying family. I didn't want to tear my family apart. So a bit of background, mixed crews in the race were scarce already, but out of 35 teams, we were the only mixed gender crew. And a year or so before the start, we were at Rannoch, which is the company that built our boat, and we were there for an open day. And towards us came two lads, you know, like stacked shoulders, macho looking, buff guys. And they said to us, "We have the same boat, so that makes you two our only competition in this year's race." I mean, I guess they were kind of right. But who would you at Dean Close put your money on? What would you do? Would you put your money on two northern lads? Or would you put your money that on a brother and sister? Who would you think was going to rank higher? Well, I wiped my tears and we hugged each other into the sunset. And my brother turned to me and says, "Anna, the race isn't over yet. We still have one mission, but we can only achieve it together." And that key word is together. At one point in the race, these two northern lads were 108 nautical miles ahead of us. We were averaging about 60 miles a day. So to put that into perspective, it would have taken us 2 full days to catch them, but only if they had stopped rowing completely, which obviously they weren't going to do. And this sounds like a pretty big challenge, right? To make up 108 miles. So how could we overcome this challenge and gain on our opponent? We realized we were not able to control them. We weren't able to control their route, their weather, nothing. Instead, we focused on the things we could control, and those were the things on board Lily, our boat. The first was our attitude. Our boat mantra was banter, not bicker. The second thing that we controlled was our shift pattern. So I mentioned earlier we rowed in 2 hours on, 2 hours off, but we changed this to rowing 3 hours on, 3 hours off at nighttime. It gave us an extra hour of sleep, but in the day, we rowed for 12 hours straight, with what we called a Ferrari pit stop on the hour, which gave us 60 seconds maximum to grab a snack and have a drink. But we were on a mission, and we were on this mission together, so we attacked. I'm here with you all today for International Women's Day, and I'd like to bring this back to equality and hashtag same boat So why in society today are we so hesitant to come together and participate as boys and girls, as men and women, as brothers and sisters? International Women's Day is all about recognizing the achievements of women, but honestly, I see this day to recognize the strengths of both men and women in the drive and conversation of gender equality. This week, you at Dean Close have been raising money for UN Women UK. On Friday, I think you're doing a collection. And this is the exact same charity that my brother and I raised money for too. And they are the only organization dedicated to achieving equality on a global scale. And for me, I kind of see the movement for equality as twofold. So a bit of a history recap. Stage one is when men ruled society. This is back in the day. This is when men always held the position of power and privilege. And at this time, women were fighting, and we were fighting alone to change their ideas. But now we are in stage two, and the movement has shifted. The drive for equality involves everybody, because women are no longer fighting for rights. We can vote, right? We can wear trousers if we want to, and leggings. So stage two is now, and that's really recognizing the important part that women and girls play in society, and the great things that can be achieved when we come together as equal partners. I asked you earlier, who did you place your money on? The Northern boys or my brother and I? Well, we crossed the finish line in 43 days, 15 hours, and 22 minutes. Now holding 2 Guinness World Records as the first ever brother and sister to row an ocean and the fastest mixed pair. The Northern lads finished behind us by 56 miles. We didn't beat them because we were physically stronger. We weren't. We beat them because there is strength in diverse teams. My biggest fear was losing that relationship that I had with my brother and tearing my entire family apart. But when a situation got uncomfortable and challenging, in the ocean, we weren't able to just close our eyes and wish it all to go away. Instead, we had to face that situation head on. When adversity is all around us, my brother and I, we came together and supported each other, just like boys and girls, men and women, families, friends. And International Women's Day this year, choosing to challenge. This ties in so well with your core values at Dean Close. The first being love. Love what you do, love yourself, and love your friends and family. Because at the end of the day, there were so many challenges that my brother and I faced on the row, and in particular being siblings, but it was the love that kept us together and that unique bond. Another top tip is, if somebody doesn't believe in you, make sure you love and believe in yourself first. Because if you love what you do, others will see that in you, and that's when they will invest. The second is courage. I love this one. This is on my daily affirmations. The definition, according to the Oxford Dictionary of courage, is the ability to do something that frightens oneself. When I first started this presentation, I said that there was that piece of paper that says, are you willing to risk it all? And all of those factors, death, injury, illness, none of them scared me. But I realized in the moment, all of those things scared me. There were waves big enough where I thought I was going to die. My brother got ill, and that was scary. So not even the row itself, but the years of preparation leading up to it. Courage is saying, although I am scared, I am still willing to do it, and I have the courage to do it. And that's exactly how we got to the finish line. Perhaps you are scared of heights, but you still have the courage to do Duke of Edinburgh and hike all the way up to that top and then see the beautiful view, which makes everything worth it. We were scared, we didn't have enough money to take on the challenge, but we had the courage to ask for sponsorship. And like I said, we were so frightened when huge waves hit us, but there was nowhere to go. We had to have courage to keep going and keep rowing and just be a little bit wet at times. And lastly, contribution. You can have a challenge. For me, it took 8 years, like I said, from 2012 Christmas list to actually executing and achieving my dream. So don't give up. Earlier I said, think of that challenge as an opportunity. So to achieve your dream and overcome that, say yes to the opportunity in front of you and make it easy on yourself. Think every day, what are you doing and how are you contributing to achieving that long-term goal? Perhaps it's an exam, and we all know that cramming the night before doesn't get us anywhere. And the exams can be very challenging, but we know a little bit of study each day is a contributing factor to then achieving the end result that we want. So as boys and girls, there are many things that can be challenging. So if you take one thing away from this talk with you today, please just pick from the following. I encourage you to do as my brother and I did, whether it's challenging yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, or just coming together and challenging society by breaking those gender stereotypes. If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. My brother and I chose to challenge, and by doing so, we achieved the seemingly impossible, and so can all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was a really, really interesting talk, and I'm sure we have quite a few questions to finish off. So I think I will hand over to Evie, who has got the questions there.
Hi there. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions here actually. The first one is, how have the lessons that you've learned impacted your life now?
Oh, I'm sorry, I think you cut out. Could you please repeat it?
Sorry, I can repeat that, yeah. How have the lessons you've learned impacted your life now?
Oh, good question. Wow, there are so many lessons. I think the one main one for me is the difference between just surviving and competing. If you really want to go for something, just surviving isn't good enough. You need to do everything you can to actually have a competitive advantage and gain on that. Another lesson from sea, which I didn't realize until I was in the middle of the ocean, is actually pollution is a huge problem. We were rowing and came across like water bottles which would just float by us in the middle of the ocean, and we were also seeing like dolphins and whales and nature. And it wasn't until after the row that I realized, oh wow, like this is actually serious and we need to do something about it. So that's definitely something that I've taken away from the row, which before I didn't even think was a problem. And now I'm like, I will take my own shopping bags to the store.
Wow, that's amazing. Mr. McShane, have you got a couple there that you would like to ask?
Yeah, we have actually. We've got a few questions here. So one question that we'd like to ask is, you talked a lot about your dad and your family. What was their initial reaction when you said what you were going to do with your brother?
That's a really good question. So my mum's reaction was totally in denial. We would be at dinner and we'd be like, so mum, you know, we're rowing across the Atlantic in like a year's time. She'd be like, okay, what would you like for dessert? And then we would get some t-shirts made like this one. And then we'd be like, mum, look, we've got merchandise now. Like, would you like to wear one? And she'd be like, oh, okay, thanks. But even until the moment we left, I think she was just in total denial. She just didn't believe it was happening. Whereas my dad was the opposite completely. He was there every single step of the way, whether it was just being there to potter around the boat and, you know, oh, maybe you'll need this tool on board. And he was just our biggest fan, I would say. He just told absolutely everybody about it. And yeah, he was really invested.
One quick question, Evie, before I hand back over to you. Just a really good practical question from over here. Did you ever just get really cold and wet and miserable?
That is exactly what we were most of the time. Cold, wet, and a little bit miserable. So leaving the Canary Islands, it's very cold. In fact, we wore basically salopettes and like what you would wear skiing. It was that cold, especially at nighttime. And it was also, you felt colder because you weren't able to eat because you were so seasick. But then as we got closer to the Caribbean, it definitely warmed up. And by the end, the sun was just beaming down on us every single day. The wet side of things, yeah, you're in the ocean, you're getting wet every second. It was crazy because your skin was just full of salt sores and like raw blisters, and the salt just ate away at your skin. So by the end, my bottom looked like a pepperoni pizza. It was absolutely awful. I would not recommend.
That image. That's great. Evie, question.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about sort of things that you wanted to bring on your boat and the struggles that you had with that. But have you got one item that you wished you brought with you, but you didn't?
Oh, I don't think I've ever been asked that before. Wow. An item, no. More food, yes. Like, I don't know, just a huge pot of Nutella or something like that would, like, more Nutella, yeah. With a spoon.
I've got another one here. What's your favourite thing about being a part of the UN Women and how that's kind of impacted your journey?
Super easy to answer this. Just being surrounded by a network of incredible people who all have the same values and core mission as you do, and being able to hear the stories of the things that they have done. One of them that I was reading about actually just recently was a lady who was a refugee. She was living in Africa, but all of her family was still living in Africa, and she actually escaped and went to Norway. In Norway, she then started a financial program where you can send money, but instead of having to pay for all of these transfer fees, it would just be you donated, and then you can send money to her family back in Africa. And typically in her community, the men would be in charge of all of those funds. So she would be sending stuff back super expensively at a fee, and then they would just be spending it on nothing which was helping the society or the community. Whereas now she's raised money for this, and people like yourself and myself can donate, and it can actually go to groceries, or it can go to a girl's education. And so now we're contributing money, but because of this girl who's escaped Africa and gone to Norway, and now she's able to send money back to her family and know exactly where it's going. So it's just like short little stories like that, which I read and hear, and just amazing women who are so inspirational, who just come up with these incredible ideas, like changing lives for the many.
I think we've probably got time for just a couple of questions. So in terms of we've got a question from the fourth form Lime Girls. Brilliant question. What was the first thing that you did when you reached land?
So all of my family was in Antigua, which was incredible. So just hugging them and feeling like human contact again. A shower, feeling like hot water on your skin. And I mean, I hadn't washed my hair in 43 days. I hadn't showered in 43 days. So just having that shower, I think I used all of the hot water in the hotel, just standing there for hours and hours. Just, it felt incredible on your really sore skin, just having fresh water.
And Evie, have you got a final question now? I know there's been some coming on the Q&A box now, if you can see them.
Yeah. There's a question here saying, what was the best wildlife you saw?
Definitely dolphins. The dolphins are my favorite animal in general, but any opportunity that I saw a dolphin, I would be in the water before my brother could even blink. And we're always clipped on just in case, because sometimes the waves and the currents are so big. But one time I just remember seeing a school of dolphins swarm towards us, and my brother kept rowing, and I was like, oh, bye. I jump in with the GoPro, and I just see like 2 dolphins circling right beneath my feet. It was amazing. It was so surreal, but definitely dolphins.
Thank you so much. There are loads more questions and we haven't got time to ask you, but brilliant answers. Thank you. I think we're going to be handing back over now to Ethan, who is in the theatre. Thanks.
Okay. And if anybody has any more questions, thank you all so much for having me here today. In particular, I'd like to thank Miss Scrivener, whose dad was actually my rowing coach at Cheltenham Ladies College, which is a fun fact. But thank you all, and please reach out over Instagram or our website at The Seedlings. If you have any more questions, we'd love to hear from you.
That's great. Thank you, Anna. I'd like to start by thanking the panel and all of those of you who sent in your engaging questions. Anna, I think everybody here in the Bacon Theatre and those online would agree that your words of perseverance, cooperation, and overcoming challenges are a true inspiration, and particularly pertinent to our celebrations of International Women's Day this year. I was particularly struck by your insight into perceiving obstacles not as challenges, but as opportunities for self-improvement. If you'd like to all now join me in giving Anna another well-deserved round of applause.